You're ready. All right. Call the Topsham Planning Board to order. Could you please take the roll?
Yes, Don Span,
Present.
Carrie Bickford, excused, Ronald Bisson,
Present.
Larry Brand,
Present.
Tim Dunham,
Present.
Scott Libby,
Present.
Andy Muncy.
Keep excused as well. Okay, thank you. So just a couple comments before we get started. We're going to go through and approve the minutes, and then we have 6 public hearings. We are going to take public comments from the audience here. We're not doing public comments from Zoom, although people can, plug into Zoom to watch proceedings. But anyone that would like to speak in the public hearing on any of these public items need to be present in the facility here. Secondly, item E on this agenda, the subdivision pre-sketch/sketch site plan for Eagle River is just that. That is not a public hearing and we won't be taking public comments during that discussion. There will be in the future, provided it goes forward, discussions that are had with the public. And anyone that wants to get any comments in, please feel free to email the town in regards to that project. So that being said, the approval of the minutes, do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
So I guess we go. Tim, Scott, any discussion?
The only question I have on the minutes is that we have approved the blast permit for just lot 6, not lot 67. And I don't know if that's reflected in the minutes. I don't see it in the minutes.
Okay, I know that it was adjusted as part of the conditions, right?
Yes.
So,
The NOD was adjusted, I must have missed it in the minutes.
okay, so if we can, with that correction.
With that correction,
Yeah.
then no problem.
I'll take a friendly amendment to the motion.
Second again.
All right, so any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Thank you. So the first public hearing, that we have is an ordinance to amend the town code, chapter 225-50, multifamily dwelling dimensional requirements, subsections C, I, and CJ to provide the density permitted in the village center zoning district and remove any appearance of a conflict with LD 2003. So you want to kind of talk at each of these?
So this first one, increased density in the village center is in line with the direction of the zoning code. And planning board has agreed that the density requirement for the village center should be adjusted from 1/4 to 1/12 of the minimum lot size for additional units beyond the first. Language in both subsection I and subsection J were revised for the advice of the town attorney, as LD 2003 prohibits establishing dimensional requirements for additional dwelling units permitted by law that are greater than the required lot area of the first unit. So for discussion with the board, I've added 2 bonus density units to zones LB and LI. So as not to reduce their allowable density.
Okay, so that's the comment where it says, in addition, multifamily developments in these zones shall be eligible for 2 bonus density units. Correct. Okay. So it's, again, subsection I and J are the changes to this document. Do we have any discussion at the board before I open up for public comment? All right, seeing none. Public comments, questions, concerns are welcome. Anyone that would like to discuss this item, please step to the podium.
You need name and address and so forth.
Please.
Jeanette McNeil, I live at 2 Brookside Drive. I apologize, I could not hear the chair's explanation of public comments. And I just wanted to check, are we is there any point at which we are going to be allowed to comment on your item E?
Item E is currently a pre-application and sketch site plan.
Yeah,
It isn't a public hearing. I think some people did get that confused, which is why I tried to clarify it.
so you
But
are
we're
not
not taking
accepting
public
comment.
comments on that tonight.
Can you accept written comments?
Yes.
Okay. If you want written comments,
And say what they'll do is they'll make copies and
That's just
email those out to the board.
that's fine. I'll give you a copy for you too. Thank you.
Thank you. So back to this item, sir. Please identify yourself and
Sure,
your address.
my name is Brian Banton. I live at 6 Elm Street in Topsham.
Okay.
As I understand it, item 1 would pretty dramatically increase the allowable density in, that zone. I think that's a great idea. I think that we should, as a town, be looking at all of the ways we can take down barriers to the creation of new housing. We know that we need many housing units across the state of Maine, and Topsham can play a really important role here. I want to talk a little bit about parking, which might seem odd, but the reason I want to talk about parking is because in the past, a lot of towns have regulated parking in such a way that have created all sorts of standards around parking, minimum parking standards and all sorts of things. As I understand it in the recode, we're moving away from that. I think that's brilliant. Regulating the visual impact of parking, I think makes sense, but a lot of the other minimums and standards and things that we've done in the past have generated far too much parking. And also as another consequence of that has been a reduction in the production of housing units, which wasn't the intention of that policy, but it was a side effect. I'd like to think, or I'd like to encourage the planning board to think of density as like the new parking. And that we should begin to move away from the regulation of density like we have in the past, because I think there are unintended consequences. My wife and I own the corner lot at Maine and Elm Street, which is about 1/3 of an acre. We've been really excited to see recode come along and hopefully allow us to build something on that lot. Presently, the draft code imposes a 4-unit cap per building. And we think that, while the regulations might allow us to build something, the economics of it are not going to work very well. And so I think, in general, the town really should consider reducing regulations on density, and I think this is a great opportunity to begin to do that. So I want to absolutely support what's in front of you this evening. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I would ask you to get your comments to the CPIC committee.
Yes, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Any other public comments, questions, concerns? All right. One last time. All right. Seeing none, I'll come back to the board. Board, have any further discussion on
Just, I think,
number 1?
through the workshops, we've done a pretty good job of coming together on this, and, between this changing the ordinance, getting ahead of where recode's going, but going in the same direction and with density is great. And thanks for fixing J so that the folks in the lower village and light industrial areas can keep the density that they already have. So,
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other comments?
I still have a problem with doing this at this time. I understand where potentially recode might go. But I think doing this is premature with regard to the changes. And this only came about with regard to a particular proposal for a development. And I don't think we should be amending the code just to make it so possible for a development, which is, you know, I don't have anything against the development, but I don't think we should be amending the code piecemeal with regard to this type of situation, and to just grease the skids with regard to one development.
Okay, I would personally debate that in that I think that this is probably moving in the direction that we should be moving. And we were looking at it from a global, this isn't just for that one project. That's why the additional change was made to this, to make sure that we were in fact considering all the zones and so forth being impacted. So whether it's that project or another project, it's neither spot zoning or doing something to support a specific project. That project may have been the impetus for us to go back and review this, right? But to the extent that I think this is moving in the right direction, and to the extent that I do believe we need more housing, this is a positive move. But that's my opinion as one person, not as telling anyone else how to vote. Right, so any other comments? All right, are we ready to vote?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, yeah,
Before we
we
go.
should make a motion first.
Okay. I hereby move that the planning board for the ordinance amendments to 22550C.1I and 2550C.1J to the select board for addition to the town warrant with a recommendation ought to pass.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, I'll take the vote now. All in favor? All opposed? All right. Thank you. All right. And please, when it comes to the following hearings and stuff, please make sure people hear your opinion on it.
Say it again?
Well, we have a town meeting ultimately.
Oh, yes.
Forward. I would just appreciate it if you can, we don't write opposing views in our write-ups here, but
Right.
it wouldn't hurt at all for people to hear that opinion because I think it's important,
Yeah, I generally try to attend town meeting.
right? So, all right, an ordinance to amend the town code, chapter 225, attachment 2, table of dimensional requirements to amend the following: replace the floor area ratio and open space ratio with impervious coverage, remove maximum frontage, add per building to maximum building footprint, strike footprints 6 and 16, footnotes 6 and 16, relating to open space and floor area ratio. Revise footnote 15 to clarify that maximum setback only applies to the first building on the lot, and modify streetscape language for consistency. Add footnote 29 to allow for a lesser reduction in impervious coverage for civic uses in R3, and add a footnote 30 to requirement 12 feet from the streetscape improvements. So I guess if you would like to,
Sure,
that was a mouthful.
yeah. So the floor area ratio and the open space ratio have been removed from the current ordinance and replaced with maximum impervious surface cover, which is consistent with the direction the code is going. The new standard represents a reduction in allowable lot coverage for R1, R2, R3, R4, R2B, MUL, LB, and BC. Currently, there's no safeguard in place to prevent property owners from basically paving the majority of their lot. As far as the floor area ratio only speaks to structures, and the landscape green space required by the open space ratio is minimal. Footnote 29 has been added to provide flexibility for some non-residential uses in the R3. That reads, permitted civic uses on lots under 6 acres may not exceed 40% impervious or 39,204 square feet, whichever is less. So under this, less than 2.25 acres will receive 40% impervious, be allowed up to 40% impervious coverage, and those between 2.25 acres and 6 acres can have up to 39,204 square feet. And this allows uses that provide social gathering places, which is a function promoted by the comp plan, greater flexibility in this rural area. Maximum frontage has been deleted from the dimensional table. The line has been intended, was intended for industrial and R2B zones, and the maximum approved for R2B was 200 feet. The zoning districts and figures have been misrepresented in later updates to the ordinance, and it remains unclear what was approved for the maximum frontage in the industrial zone. And the code enforcement officer recommended deleting this line from the table altogether. Footnote 15 was modified to require the massing of the initial building to meet the maximum setback. This requirement in the past has caused confusion as it relates to multi-structure development, so it was done for clarification purposes. It's also noted that a 12-foot wide streetscape is required and 5-foot wide sidewalks. Footnote 6 and 16 were deleted as they apply to floor area ratio and open space ratio, which we are removing. Footnote 30 pertaining to LVVC, MV, and MUC has been added, which contains language pulled from the proposed ordinance regarding streetscape, which says where the area from the back of the curb or the edge of the pavement to the lot line is less than 12 feet, the streetscape easement must be provided on the private lot to expand the area to at least 12 feet. The minimum setback for the building must be measured from the easement edge at least 12 feet off the back of curb or edge of pavement.
All right, so again, comments from the board? So none? Public hearing? Any public comments, questions, concerns, or clarifications? We have our codes officer here. If you'd like him to explain a couple of these items, we're more than prepared, I think, to answer any questions. All right, once again, any questions, comments, concerns, or any public comment? All right, seeing none. Back to the board. Right. Again, we did a number of workshops on this, so I think we're pretty familiar with it, but is there anything that we need to bring up to the public on this?
There's some of this that I don't have difficulty with because it's cleaning up of the table. Here again, I think some of it is triggered by a particular project. Two, that we're still working on the recode. So I do have a problem, especially where we've not seen a complete version of the recode in order to see how the various pieces work in together with each other. So I do have a problem with anticipating saying, oh, this is what's going to happen with the recode. We haven't seen the entire recode. We don't know if that's even going to fly. I believe that we should not be anticipating what may happen in the recode.
Okay. Do you want to make any comments?
Unless there's a question there.
Okay. Because I think the item 30, right? As far as the measurement, you know, for the streetscape and so forth. Recode or not recode, I think that's an improvement and actually makes things better
I
in
think,
our code.
I think that comment can apply to all the proposals here.
I think, you know, at least the memo and overall, the main one that refers to recode is the, you know, the removal of the floor area and the open space ratio moving to less, the impervious surface. And at least in my head, I really have a hard time getting around how the floor area ratio and the open space ratio work together. And they do, but I don't, it's not intuitive as to how they work together. Whereas the impervious surface is clear. And I kind of like where that's going. I really like the change to footnote 15, where we are, I think, getting to not necessarily the intention of the current comp plan, but also to the intention of the past comp plan about the massing of buildings in the village center to try and have more of a village feel. And you know, if there are multiple buildings and we have one that's massing, that, you know, that really fits in with the old comp plan and where we're going with the new recode. So, you know, I think we're moving in the right direction with all of this.
Okay, any other comments, Ron, or? All right. Are we ready for a motion?
I hereby move that the planning board forward the ordinance amendments to chapter 225, attachment 2, table of dimensional requirements to the select board for addition to the town warrant with a recommendation ought to pass.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? All right, thank you. Number 3, an ordinance to amend the town code chapter 225-6 definitions to add the definition of civic use and revise the definition of stream. Back on.
Yes, so definitions have been revised to include a modified definition of stream consistent with state shoreline zoning. The town currently utilizes the Natural Resource Protection Act definition of a stream, which the DEP also uses to regulate streams. So protection is not lost, but enforcement is transferred to the state. The more general definition would allow the town to employ DEP assistance in the determination of streams and also provide setback relief through a permit variable for the DEP. And definitions has also been revised to include civic uses as referenced in the dimensional table footnote 29. A use group that includes educational, cultural, or community assembly facilities that provide services that benefit the general public.
And again, the board, are there questions or comments for any?
I can go at this point if you wish.
You'd like to say something, please.
Back when we had a workshop regarding the definition of stream, I raised the question of whether or not that change, because it talks about Great Pond, et cetera, in the state regulation, as well as the proposed here, whether that would affect anything that would currently be protected by our current ordinance.
Mhm.
We were advised that, no, that won't change anything. However, in reading the summary for what's coming up under our agenda E, that for that subdivision, there were 2 comments indicating that, oh, well, wait for the possible change of stream in May 2024, and that may take care of the problem of what is on that lot. So to me, that means that, yes, if we change the definition of stream, in order to somehow make this easier to not have the town worry about it, then we now have lost a lot of control over possible streams that we define as being holding water for more than 6 months in a regular rainfall type year and some other criteria. That's all gone. And I can think of a number of streams that we have that fit the town criteria that would be lost under protection and jurisdiction of the town if we change the definition.
Can I know something? I think that would relate more to Amendment 5, which removes the unmapped streams from the district designation. Eagle River has unmapped streams in their subdivision. And under the current ordinance, unmapped streams, if determination is made that they are streams, they're required to operate as though they're in the shoreline zone. So that's where that comes from.
All right, so,
But the stream definition talks about coming from the Great Pond, et cetera.
so Tom, you and I talked about streams before. Do you want to weigh in and tell us what your thoughts are? And I guess while we're talking about it, I don't wanna go too far down the path on 5, but since it
It'll involve
seems
five.
involving 5, can you talk to us about 3 and 5 briefly?
Sure.
Yeah, come on up. Thank you.
So the regulation, as DEP intended, won't be reduced. Because a stream is defined two ways. So the state set up the National Resources Protection Act, well, that's a national, and the DEP enforces that. In addition to that, DEP mandates all towns have a mandatory shoreline zoning act, which we do. And in that, the intent of the shoreline, local shoreline zoning is so that a code enforcement officer or anybody appointed to enforce that can, meaning they don't have to have specific knowledge of wetlands or aquatic species or anything like that. The definition that you're reading that we're proposing is out of the mandatory shoreline zoning. And there's a map in here I included. Yeah, that's when local shoreline zoning picks it up. There are other streams that meet the NERPA definition, which we currently have a version of that, not the entirety of it. And that one DEP regulates regardless whether the locals regulate it or not. And that's anything that's a dotted or a solid blue line on the GIS publication. And I included it in that package if you want to take a look at it. So by the town trying to enforce that same ordinance, that ordinance is embedded in our local shoreline zoning act, which means all those standards apply. So we have the same definition with two different standards applicable now. So our standards on a stream where the convergence is, we have a 75-foot setback, and any lot abutting it has to have 200 feet of frontage on it. Under the National Resource Protection Act, they have the 75-foot setback, they don't have the minimum frontage. And they also have a program that's that thick book right here. This is their act and rules. And they can allow relief through what's called a permit by rule process that you go through that organization. So that's why we're not consistent. For some reason, we've overstepped, or we're trying to do the same thing twice. But the applicant or landowners don't get the relief locally.
So I guess a couple thoughts. One is the towns have the ability to actually be more stringent. than
Now it's gonna be more
the state.
stringent, but.
And that is acceptable.
And I'll throw out there though, in doing that, they've got to have staff that's capable of meeting those requirements. This town never has.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, and what I'm trying to understand is the difference between 3 and 5, because I didn't get that out of what you just told us. But maybe that's just me.
So the maps, our shoreline maps, well, here's an example, and I know you can't share this with everybody, but this is a current stream protection area. So it looks like a lot. When that was delineated by a wetland person, it was a very, very small portion of that. The rest did not even meet our stream definition, even though we mapped it that way. So our maps need to be cleaned up. And what's your concern, Larry? That they won't be regulated anymore? They won't be regulated any less, is actually. In
No, I'm
fact,
not saying, okay, less and more, I'm saying in the future, when you say more, I'm looking at this and saying, this means that there are various bodies of water that, under the old definition, I'm just reading the first line, contains or is known to contain flowing water continuously for a period of at least 6 months of the year under normal seasonal rainfall conditions. And you're talking about perennial streams. Perennial to me means all year. So all year is more than 6 months. and we don't end up with an ability to, let's say a subdivision comes to us, or, development comes to us, to be able to say, okay, are there bodies of water that are flowing for more than 6 months out of the year on this piece of property? Under this new definition, if it's not mapped on the, US Geological Survey maps, then it's not under the definition of any type of thing we can look at. Somebody comes to us as a planning board, yeah, I realize maybe, you don't know aquatic species as the code enforcement officer. But we can say, applicant, you need to map this out for us. Let us know if there are any streams for, that, flows from continuously more than 6 months and has the other, types of criteria. I'm not going to read those. I'm sure you're more familiar with them than I am.
Sure, but, and
So
you keep referring
that's
to
my,
applicants, but this applies to everyone in the room. Whether you're coming in with an application or not, so as a homeowner, this applies to you. Right now,
yeah,
Can I say something?
yeah,
Also, any applicant that submits will still have to provide a plan and have those streams and everything delineated on there. If they require DEP approval, planning board's going to say, we need DEP approval for you
Right.
can get your
but,
permit.
but we're just saying DEP approval, DEP monitoring, not something that we have on a local level. Because as the chair indicated, the town itself can go beyond DEP. You can't go less than DEP. But you can say, and I just know of various streams that are, more than 6 months out of the year, have water flowing in them that are not mapped
right?
on the GIS, but they are definitely streams and.
Well, are they?
What's there,
So I've been on,
what's there to protect them?
I've been out with DEP more than once. We had one area, it was mapped as a stream, and we ended up probably 100 yards down through the woods before they determined it was. And to me, it looked exactly like a stream. It had banks and flowing water, and they were picking up rocks and finding aquatic animals and vegetation. And finally, at a point in the woods, it was determined to be a stream. But previous to that, it wasn't. That's the special knowledge, and that's why DEP reserves that for people with that special knowledge. And that's why through the Resources Protection Act that they enforce, and that you'll see on any plan that comes through here, anyone doing wetland delineations is going to have that, is going to map out all these, anything that is a stream by this definition as well as wetlands. And like I said, their definition, it's the same one we have. It contains or no flowing water for a period of 6 months or more. It also has the other.
Well, we're wiping out the 6 months. And I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding this, that the proposal is to have our
The proposal is to revert to what DEP intended the towns to enforce. That's what the proposal is.
Okay.
Because we don't have a specialized knowledge.
I'm saying we should have more protection than what necessarily DEP wants.
And that's
Wants to do
valid,
on a statewide basis.
but if you're gonna go down that road, we need to have someone with that specialized knowledge, or require every homeowner to provide a report from somebody with specialized knowledge. The town just hasn't done that. I don't know if there's an interest in that, but that would be the direction you have to go.
Yeah. I'm also concerned with the development of the property. I'm not sure that,
So again,
I'm not, here again, I'm not necessarily sure that it's gonna say, oh, every homeowner's gotta go out and hire a specialist.
if there's any indication of wet areas, then the answer would be yes. It just hasn't been done that way.
So for all these years,
Right.
that nobody's ever done that.
Nobody's ever done that. It's only come up when a project comes in for the board where the applicants wetland, scientist or whomever has determined, the wetland or the stream areas or the rivers or anything on that may be on that lot that has some sort of regulation attached to it.
So the lack of enforcement though doesn't, mean that we should necessarily adopt the DEP rule
I'm not saying that. I'm
because,
just,
the my concern is that even though, okay, all these haven't been enforced with regard to, Joe Smith and his little brook along on his property. But when there is something that comes before us, are we going to now be limited as to what we can ask for delineation?
no, you'll be consistent with what the DEP is looking for. So they're not looking for a first order stream to be regulated as a shoreline zoning stream, which would mean setbacks you can't reduce and minimum lot frontage. That's what you're tied into right now.
So you're saying this applies only to shoreline zoning?
I'm saying this applies to stream as the town defines it in their shoreline zoning ordinance.
So what do we have as a planning board to be able to address, the ones that DEP says we don't care about?
Well, I think every plan that's come before the board has had all the wetlands indicated on it, that fair assessment. And with that would be any streams
But it's,
meeting that was determined to be a stream under the National Resource Protection Act. DEP wouldn't let a development go through, or wouldn't let a town approve a development that impacted the wetlands in sensitive areas.
so what's it prevent an applicant from saying, this doesn't, come under the DEP requirements, therefore planning board do that. We don't have to, all we have to do is comply with DEP, not with the town ordinance.
They have to apply with both.
How are they gonna have to comply with both if
So
we
Larry,
don't have that procedure?
You do have, okay.
so Tom,
The definitions.
I'll just take it up a level, right?
Yep.
If I understand what I'm hearing, essentially both for both of these items, right, that deal with the stream and its stream protection district. With these changes, it's fully aligning with DEP.
Yes,
And fully aligning with DEP, I think to Larry's point, it's softening the town's requirements. Or maybe lessening is a better word.
yes.
Okay, that's what you're really saying. I think that's what everybody.
And the question is that a bad thing?
I'm not giving any plus or minus to that. I'm just saying that's what in fact this does.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's
That's fair assessment.
Okay. All right, thank you. We're gonna open up the public hearing unless there's objection. Okay, if there's anyone, who would like to speak to this, has any questions, concerns, comments, please step to the mic.
Hi, I'm Victor Langelo, 2 Brookside Drive. One thing I want to add to this discussion is, and I don't, this is both on 3 and 5. I don't know if I'm out speaking at the wrong time, but
No, that's fine, since they sort of
overlap.
mesh and overlap.
I guess we're working on a climate action plan that focuses on vulnerability. One of the things we're going to be concerned about is areas of town where severe storms and stuff like that could end up, producing essentially a heavy, wet groundwater, surface water, et cetera, which if we're going to be serious about it, we actually need to regulate. So I just don't know if we're doing this too early. Maybe this is okay, and then we revise it later when we have more data. But at some point, I think we're going to have to do our own mapping because the data isn't there to know what's going to happen in, when storms are, in 10 years from now, when storms are, twice or 3 times as severe as they are now. So, we're going to have to get ahead of the curve. DEP isn't going to catch up with that. And it's not going to happen. So just, I put that out there as, that's something to consider. And if we can't regulate this now with what are supposedly small streams, first order streams that maybe don't count for anything right now, but they probably will in a few years. And so, the concept of, I know it's tough to enforce, but at the same time, if we build these developments, it's gonna cost us money. We're gonna have to, compensate the homeowners or develop better drainage systems later on after the development's all done, et cetera. I mean, it's not free. So anyway, I just put that out there as a concern.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Tom, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, this is another question.
All right, seeing none other, I'll close the public hearing. So we need to address the specific one. We'll come back around to, number 5 in a little bit. But I guess, let me ask another question of you, Tom. To the extent that this is what we've been working with for a while, right? Do we feel we have issues with it? Does it really, I don't mean to question the need to change it or not change it, but is there a compelling reason to change this, or is this, I guess, what's driving the change? Maybe is a different way to ask the question, right?
So the
And that's not to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
And come to the mic because
Yeah.
for the, I guess, the Zoom audience, we need that.
The town's been due to update its shoreline zoning ordinance since probably 2016. And we're gonna put it off and maybe get it in with the recode. And at that time, the mandatory definition would follow with that ordinance unless we amended it or the town amended it. The problem with the definition now is, believe me for enforcement, I'm not a wetlands guy. I can tell you what a mackerel is and look at a scoured bottom, but the town has never employed anyone that can enforce this definition. My predecessors aren't qualified, I'm not qualified. I used to rely on DEP, but they're so scarce now, you can't get them. So the enforcement only comes in when a plan comes before the planning board and when somebody else has delineated these areas as streams. So it's very selective. And it personally, an ordinance should be enforced uniformly, not selectively. So the town could, we could go try to step it up or just do what's required of us by DEP. That's the gist of it.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
So,
And as far as, where we're going with it in recode, I know we've read a lot of different recode stuff, so I'm sorry, I don't remember where.
It's not in there yet. It would be a total replace of what we have to meet the mandatory. Is there now.
And given, I think out of all the ones we're discussing, this is the one that I think we have the most questions on still.
Sure.
And I can see where, it's a lot of burden in things that you'd have to know, to be able to enforce this. I do, in reading the fine print of, them DEP having a process to reduce the setback less than 75, and also reducing I don't know if it's reducing the 200 foot or there
It
is.
doesn't exist under there.
Yeah, I kind of like the 200 foot just because that probably helps the stream a lot better than the 75 foot setback, really. It seems like this, especially since we haven't discussed it a lot in the recode, that it might be something that we can wait a year, that we can include it with that recode. I don't know, just my take on that. But.
Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm just getting it in right now. So I don't want to comment.
Ryan, do you have anything? No.
if I may, just there, I did have some concerns initially on this, and, so I had problems with this right from the get-go. But then when I'm, like I said at the beginning, when I'm reading the various comments from the various town people, you know, Public Works, yourself, with regard to the subdivision site plan that's coming in before us. And right there was two things that said, you know, well, wait until, after May town meeting, and maybe this problem isn't there anymore.
Yeah,
And so it was like, oh, wait a second.
like it happened on another subdivision in town.
Yeah, do we
It was,
lose,
the stream disappeared.
do we as the planning board lose the ability to actually, you know, protect what we should be protecting on any of these subdivisions? You don't have to answer.
I don't know.
I'm just kind of throwing that out.
I'm trying to think of an example where this has come in and actually gone through. There was another subdivision initially that had a map stream, and the stream was then determined not to be a stream. There was also town culvert that was replaced where there was a stream, and then it was determined it wasn't a stream.
Right.
Uh,
Obviously, we could have the applicant provide us
There
with
was a few more examples where there were streams and then there weren't streams.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not been consistent when it really comes up against it. So yeah, my comments on, you'll see the subdivision coming up, this definition does affect that.
Yeah.
Because the DEP will regulate it. But they won't be burdened to the extent that the town regulations will require. And this is not,
Frankly, you got
we
me on
still
the
have a
fence.
stormwater ordinance. This is something different. This doesn't affect our stormwater ordinance or that.
right, yeah, I understand that.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
It could go either way, right? You know, to one extent, we have something in place, right? And we certainly have the ability, and have had the ability to, have our requirements more stringent than, the state is, right? So we're not wrong in what we have. The real question is, do we think we need to adjust it? In which case we are lessening requirements. So,
I think, you know, with us taking a deeper dive into shoreland zoning, for the recode. And as Victor said, the, you know, climate action committee is going to be doing more work. I don't know if they might be on the same pace as all the climate action that's happening in our country. You know, I think it's time to discuss this a little further, especially this winter / long spring that we've had. It brings a whole different idea to water runoff in our streams. So, I don't know.
so I guess I pose to the board, do we do a motion to, off the pad?
I'm not prepared to make a
vote on it?
motion.
Do we do a motion to vote against it, or do we table, or how do we want to proceed?
Well, can we make a motion to proceed with the definition of civic uses? And table the definition of streams under this one.
That's a pretty substantive change to what we published in the public hearing.
Well, the two separate definitions. We would only be,
Can we do that?
I would think so.
Okay,
I mean, the definition of civic uses
Well,
didn't.
why
not
don't we,
change it.
we can take a vote with that. But then the only caveat I would say is make sure that town council doesn't feel like we can't do it because we had to put it out there to the public in the appropriate time frame.
It was not two separate,
Right,
there was notice, it was one
Right.
thing notice, and that's.
so the question becomes, do we make a substantive change, which in effect what we put out to the public, if we take half of it away, depending on how you look at that, that's steps of it.
My thoughts, Chairman, is to table it and we'll
Me too.
discuss this further.
Table number 5. Yeah. So. Do we need to do a public hearing on number 5, or can we table them both?
I think you can just do it.
All right,
Well, no, maybe you need to open it. I don't think we can hearing.
all right, we'll do that. All right, well, let's take this one, item 3. Do we have a motion to table?
So,
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? All in favor? Okay. So unless the board disagrees, I would like to take item 5 out of order. And have that open up a public hearing and then again, go through the same discussion. All right. So we adjust our agenda to reflect, we're gonna do 5 before we do 4. All right, 5 is an ordinance to amend the town code, chapter 225-19, stream protection district, to remove unmapped streams from the district designation. Any comments? I guess any further comments? All right, open up. Any comments from the public, questions, concerns? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. So I'll entertain a motion to table.
so
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you. So we've tabled item 3 and 5. All right, back to item number 4. An ordinance to amend the town code, chapter 225-17, dimensional requirements, subsection C, to allow for multiple buildings on a lot without the requirement of locating the buildings so that the lot can be legally subdivided. I guess questions or comments here, and maybe you want to lead us all?
I was just gonna say, it kind of speaks for itself. It's keeping in the direction with the recode, once again, to allow for multiple buildings on a lot, as long as the minimum lot size and density are met for the use.
Okay. Any comments? Larry? All right.
No, other than same comment as far as anticipating the recode
Okay,
at the present time before we have the whole recode.
okay. For public hearing, do we have questions, concerns, comments on item number 4? All right, seeing none, once again, any questions, concerns, comments? All right. Do we have any further discussion on that one? I guess I'd entertain a motion.
I hereby move that the planning board forward the ordinance amendment to 225-17C, relationship of building to a lot, to the select board for addition to the town warrant, with the recommendation ought to pass.
second,
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the last public hearing this evening, item number 6, an ordinance to amend the town code, chapter 191-18, public open space and protection of natural resources, to remove the option of deed restriction from the acceptable methods of conservation. Any discussion here at the table? You gonna have to say anything?
Sure, yes, the open space fee rule in the subdivision ordinance has been amended to remove the option of deed restriction under the bylaws of a homeowners association from the acceptable methods of conservation.
And at last time meeting, we promised we'd do that.
Yes, right, this was done at, the request of the Conservation Commission. And deed restrictions as a means of conservation is still possible if the Conservation Commission recommends. And a small change was also made to replace, Recreation Committee with Recreation Department. Because we did not have a recommendation.
Okay. All right. So any further comments? Otherwise, I'll open it up. All right. Again, open public comment, questions, concerns on item number 6. Do we have any?
I just have a brief comment. Thank you for reconsidering this.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Jeanette McNeil, 2 Brookside Drive. I'll second that. Thank you. That was a commitment made at the town meeting. It's an important one because this board has pointed out repeatedly that deed restrictions cannot be maintained. They're not valid. So I appreciate your bringing it back. And it seems like a reasonable adjustment to say that the commission, the Conservation Commission would agree to that if they thought it was wise to do so. It seems reasonable.
Good, thank you. Other questions, concerns, or comments? Seeing none. Hearing is closed. Back to the board. Any comments before we entertain a motion?
I just want to say I'm not always contrary.
Oh, well, you please note that in bold, right?
Why didn't you make the motion?
I don't have the motion in front of me, I'm sorry, Scott. Other than that, I will.
Well, you can second that. Right?
I'll second through.
I hereby move that the planning board forward the ordinance amendment to 191-18, public open space and protection of natural resources to the select board for the addition to the town warrant with recommendation not to pass.
I'll second that and move that we do it by unanimous consent.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed, all right, it is unanimous. Thank you.
Fine, I'm sure Ron was gonna vote again.
Just for.
Contrary.
I was saying you should have voted against it, just to.
Oh. Okay,
So
so,
take over my mantle. You know, what are you gonna do?
thank you, we're done with our public hearings. We're gonna move on to item E, subdivision pre-application / sketch site plan. Stonewall Investments LLC has submitted a proposed third phase of expansion, 33 single-family lots and 6 duplexes at Eagle River subdivision at 298 Lewiston Road, tax map R1, lot 19.
Give me a second, I'll get this up.
Yeah, no, take your time.
All right, Jill, can you want me to? All right. My name's Bill Martin. I'm an engineer with Sightlines. I'm here on behalf of Stonewall Investments. So here today to discuss the third phase of the Eagle River subdivision. Just a quick rundown of the project team. Stonewall Investments is the applicant and would be the developer. Sightlines was the engineer and surveyor for the project. We worked with Mark Hampton Associates to do the wetland delineation and also do the soil test pits for the septics, as well as the test pits for that were used as part of the hydrogeologic study. We also worked with Mark Sensi Geologic to do the hydrogeologic study, which is what analyzes the part of what they do is analyze the flow from the septic systems and to ensure that there's adequate recharge of the water on site for the wells. So most everyone here knows this, but the process for the development review, so the planning board, we were here before you for sketch back in June of 2023. We're now before you for pre-app. We'll be back again for preliminary and then for final. DP, due to the size of the project, the number of lots, as well as the amount of impervious area, we have to get a Site Location Development Act permit, which is administered through the town process.
Because we are impacting, decent amount of wetlands, I want to say it's upward of 14,000 square feet. We have to get a NERPA permit from DEP, a tier 1, which has been submitted, and we have got some initial comments back on that. And then we are also submitting a permit by rule for a reduction in the stream setback, which we can talk more about. For those wetland impacts, we also have to get a general permit from the Army Corps. And as part of that, they will require us to provide some sort of compensation for those wetland impacts. Summary of the project, so it's located in the R2 zoning district. The portion of the site to be developed is primarily wooded. There has been some selective clearing over the years, but primarily it's wooded. So phase 3 will include 33 new single-family lots. On one lot, which for the time being is titled remaining land, there will be 6 duplexes for a total of 12 units on that piece of property. All the properties, including the duplex and the single family lots, will all be served by private wells and individual septic systems. And there will be underground power and communications installed throughout the project as well. I'll show you on the plans, but one of the major aspects of this project is the first 2 phases kind of came down off Blueberry Lane and kind of had a dead end. This next phase will connect that back to Lewiston Road, provide some connectivity for the subdivision. There is also quite a large stormwater management system being put in place for this project. There'll be 2 wet ponds installed. There'll be 3 grass under drain soil filters, and that's in addition to there's already a soil filter that's been installed out there, so 3 new ones. And then there'll also be some forested buffers that are installed on some of the residential properties as well. So before we get to plans, just a quick rundown of the town comments. We had a staff review meeting. And I'm sure Julie and Scott can add to this, but these are some of the major aspects that were discussed. One was the dimensional requirements for the single family lots and the duplex lot were not met. There were some issues with the shoreline zoning, which we're working on revising the plan to meet those requirements. The question about the 200-foot frontage, what we're doing on those lots is we're either pulling the lot out of the shoreline zone, so no portion of the lot will be within the shoreline zone, or we're combining lots to meet that 200-foot frontage. One of the other major aspects was open space. We had requested when we initially submitted the plans for the applicant to pay the in lieu fee, which I think is based on a per bedroom or per dwelling unit. We got feedback from the town that they would like us to pursue other aspects, either providing open space on site or some sort of recreation aspect to the project. The applicant would still prefer to pay the in lieu fee, but is willing to work with the town to find something that they would like. I think from the applicant's perspective, to prefer rather than to reserve open space on the property that would reduce the density, reduce the number of housing on the project, he'd prefer to pay the in lieu fee. He is willing to try to coordinate with CMP. There's a trail system. There's a CMP corridor that runs right along the property. I can show you the plans. And there's an existing trail that runs all through that CMP corridor. And we have a couple of connection points we could make from our project onto that trail system with CMP approval that I think would help tie not only this neighborhood, but the other neighborhoods kind of into that trail system a little better. Fire protection, there's no public water in the vicinity of this project or within a distance that could be extended reasonably. So the fire department asked us to provide some cisterns on the property. So we're working with the fire department to try to locate those. It's probably either 1 or 2 cisterns throughout the project. We're also working on formalizing the HOA docs for the project. We will have those draft documents ready for the preliminary submission. Another aspect that was brought up was pedestrian access. So we are providing the gravel and paved shoulders as required by the ordinance, which similar to the surrounding neighborhoods, we have people walk on the sides of the roads, and these are fairly low volume roads. But one of the aspects that was brought up from Public Works was that there are a few wetland crossings in this area where we're filling probably 10 to 12 feet, and we're gonna have some rather steep side slopes. And in those areas, he recommended us that we enlarge the road base in that area so that in the future, if the town wanted to install sidewalks in those areas, they could do that without having to go back and reestablish the side slopes. And, you know, there'd just be adequate room for them to install a 5-foot walk alongside the road if they want to in the future, which I think is reasonable. And then also for pedestrian access, we would provide those trail connections to the CMP trail system as well. And then the last major comment is the lighting plan for the duplex. We had kind of requested a waiver from that requirement at all, just saying we want to keep the light levels low, keep the light levels similar to what you see at a typical house. But the town said that they need to see something. We can request a waiver from the standards, but we still have to provide some sort of photometric plan. So we're working on that as we speak. I think everyone knows where this is, but 295 is kind of the bottom of the area of 196 cutting across it. And then the site is located right in between the Blueberry Lane neighborhood and the Ivanhoe Drive neighborhood. And there's a fairly large stream, it's part of a fairly large stream corridor. The stream itself isn't that large, but that cuts between the development on the property and the Ivanhoe subdivision. So there's kind of a natural break between those two type of projects. And this is just a zoomed in area, which doesn't show up very good on your screen, but you can kind of see the first phase that's been extended off Blueberry Lane and kind of dead ends. And as I said, part of this next phase, we'll be extending that all the way to Lewiston Road. And then you can see there's some partial clearing that's taken place in the remainder of the project, the remainder of the property where the project will take place.
Can I just jump in?
Sure, go ahead.
Just a question, is that the area that we see if you're on 196, where there's some, there's kind of like a clear area that, like off to the left if you're headed toward Lisbon?
You can see my cursor.
Yeah, it's pretty,
That's kind of right there.
kind of right there, that's part
So
of it.
that's where, if this were approved, that's where that connection would be, right in that
Okay,
area. Yeah, there's a little clear
So
area.
when you say connection, that's where it would tie back into 196.
Yes, yep,
So this stub would carry over.
yep, and actually pretty much from where that dead ends, actually it's the next phase. It would go from I think it's called a minor road to a major road, so you're gonna have larger drive aisles, larger paved shoulders. Because that's where you're gonna have a tie-in point, which I can show you the next one.
okay.
So. See. Yeah. Here. So this area over here is first two phases, dead ends, right in this area. So again, we're gonna have a road connection back to Lewiston Road, and then right where phase 2 ends right now, we'll have a new road going to the west that will kind of have a lollipop road that will close in on itself, and we'll have another road number of lots in that area. And that's also mostly where we don't currently meet the dimensional requirements of the ordinance, because a lot of those lots are backing into that stream and kick in that 200-foot frontage requirement. Most of those lots are quite a bit larger than they need to be for the ordinance. So some of those lots are going to be trimming back to kind of the minimum lot size, but just trim them back so they're out of the shoreline zone area, and they can they don't have to meet that 200-foot frontage.
But your lollipop lots meet the dimensional requirement?
Yeah, the interior lots, all those meet the requirements. Those don't have any shoreline zone associated with them. So again, the duplex lot is the one right off Lewiston Road. It's kind of a larger one. You can see right up to the north, and I'll show more detail of that a little bit. That also has some stream setbacks along with it that would kick into shoreline zone. And we're currently trying to see how we can adjust that, that design to meet those requirements. So this is the same plan, you probably can't really see very well, it just kind of overlays the aerial of the subdivision, just primarily to show that it's, you can see it's fairly wooded in there. So this is the site development plan showing the grading. The roads primarily, there's a couple areas where they will have curves. Primarily, it's just going to be ditches alongside the road to convey the stormwater. We do have 2 wet ponds located by the Lollipop areas, the Lollipop Road. And then we have 2 soil filters, stormwater ponds that are located over by the duplex development. And then one additional one that comes off right at the end of Rocky Ave, which is what extends from Blueberry Lane. So the stormwater design, we've completed it, but it hasn't currently been reviewed by the town since it was just a pre-up level. I don't believe we've submitted a site location development act permit to the town. It hasn't been fully accepted yet. We still have some outstanding items we need to provide. Sure.
On kind of the bottom left quadrant or whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
This drawing, are you delineating the kind of the lots that are from Ivanhoe
Yes.
on the opposite side of the wetland?
So it's kind of interesting that on Ivanhoe, the property line is defined as the top of the bank, which is kind of an interesting way that those deeds were written. So, the applicant's property goes down into the stream, up the other side of the bank to the top of the bank. Obviously, they're not gonna use any of the stream because you can't, it's a stream, you can't impact it, but, yeah, that's what you're seeing. That kind of curved, dark line on the very bottom, is the Ivanhoe lots.
So your buildable envelope is up top.
Yep.
At top of the bank is kind of like the border between Maine and, New Hampshire.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
Piscataquis River, the high water mark or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing it does do is, one of the concerns, we had a public informational meeting with the neighbors, and we had, I don't know, 10 or 12 people show up. Some of them were from the Ivanhoe neighborhood, and their primary concern was, impact on their visibility from the backyard. And that stream does add a nice natural buffer, you can't clear anything within there, so, any vegetation within that section is gonna remain. So you're gonna have a nice natural buffer between these two.
What kind of vegetation is currently in there?
It's pretty well wooded. I mean, it's
Mature wood or?
Yeah, Maine woods. I mean,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they're not just elder bushes or?
no, there's pretty mature growth back by the street area. Some of the stuff interior to the site, some of the stuff is a little bit smaller because I think it has been cleared in the past.
Yeah.
So it's not all, it's
There
new.
was a fairly good clearing operation going on there a few years back.
Yeah. So this is the current layout for the duplex development. So you have 6 duplex buildings, 3 on each side of the drive aisle facing each other. You also have a small overflow parking lot area for guests or for additional people. The duplex buildings here would have driveway that would drive into a garage that would have 1 bay for each side. So you have some parking built in to the units themselves, and then you have parking within that driveway as well. And you can see at the end of that driveway, we have a turnaround that was designed for emergency vehicles to be able to turn around in that area. You can also see kind of the circles on the backside of those duplexes are septic test pits that were done. So you're gonna have septic systems on the backside of these duplexes, and then you're gonna have some wells located around the property as well that meet the septic setback requirements.
So those will be not community, but individual.
Yep. Yep. And they'll be individual per duplex building. So 1 duplex building will go to 1 septic system. So I think for the time being, these are proposed just to be rental units. There may be opportunity in the future to make them condos and sell them individually. And of course, that point you get all as easements that have to go into effect for those septic system wells. But
So 1 tank per building or 1 tank per unit?
I think it'd be 1 tank per building.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shared leach field, like quasi-public type system?
Yeah. And then the thought is the wells, based on the wells they drilled for the first two phases, the water supply there is terrific. There's been some houses that got upwards of 25 plus gallons per minute. So the thought is you could probably have one, maybe two wells serve all these duplexes, but that will be something that will have to be kind of determined once they drill the wells. But there's plenty of opportunity around that property to locate wells. This is the grading plan. So you'll see a soil filter up near the road where the driveway from the duplex ties into the new subdivision road. That mostly collects runoff from that portion of the subdivision road. It also collects some of Lewiston Road. In that area of Lewiston Road kind of pitches down, kind of on the sheet from kind of north to south. And we're picking up some of Lewiston Road as well that is currently untreated. And then you also have a stormwater pond at the very bottom of the duplex, right where the turnaround is, and that will collect all the runoff from the driveways and the buildings themselves. This is probably tough for you to see, but it's a landscaping plan that we're gonna have to revise to increase in landscaping. One of the things that the applicant's interested in doing is creating some berms along the front of this property, landscaping berms, to be able to plant stuff on top of, but also to provide some natural screening for duplex tenants. You know, something so you're not gonna get headlights pointing in there. You know, make them 4 to 5 feet high with landscaping on top of it will really create a pretty good buffer for those people. One of them,
Sound deadening.
what's that?
Sound deadening.
Yeah, that too, yeah. This was also one of the items that was discussed at the public information meeting with the neighbors. The concern was about, seeing lights from this portion of the project. So we do have a light fixture and pole proposed, where the driveway ties into the subdivision road to light that intersection, because that's a safety issue. We're currently trying to work with building mounted lights on the duplexes to provide some illumination as you get interior to the site, but we really don't want to do any pole mounted fixtures other than the one up by the road, because we feel that may result in some light pollution or just glare to the neighbors. Because I mean, even if you do down facing, you do relatively, you know, if you do 15 to 20 foot poles, it's still going to provide some light to those neighbors. So we're currently trying to work with some different lights and get a photometric plan that we think can provide safe illumination levels, but don't result in, you know, any adverse impacts to the neighbors. With that, I can answer any questions or comments the board has.
Anything you're in?
No.
Scott?
I think, most of the, questions, there was a long list from staff, and we addressed a few of those, but certainly, hopefully they'll all be addressed in the next submission. One I noticed was about the Ivanhoe neighborhood being a little worried about high groundwater, but I would think that the stream itself would be a natural buffer. There's no, do hydrogeological.
No, I mean, there's kind of a relatively deep sand in this area that then goes to clay, and most of the groundwater runs on that clay seam. There's also the first 2 phases that we've built out. I think has all of them daylight basements? Most of them. Yeah, most of them have daylight basements, but none of them have had any issues with being able to daylight. There's quite a bit of up and down on this. There's quite a few drainage channels that kind of cut through the project that allow you to daylight foundation drains.
And I don't know if you got the email for no, there's another couple from Ivanhoe that, brought up the traffic question. Always have traffic questions on 196 because it's so bad over there. Yikes, I don't know, is this gonna meet any trip limit for DOT?
No, I mean, it's fairly far below any DOT requirements. We do have to bump up that street design as we get closer to Lewiston Road.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, in that section of Lewiston Road, you do have good visibility both directions. That's where it's kind of tipped going down, and you can see, I mean, it's busy, but it's not a thing where you're gonna backfill still.
And, you know, it's certainly, it comes up each project that we have.
Yeah.
196, of course, and at this point, it seems maybe something more that the town needs to address as far as in DOT. I know it's
There's something.
thinking about it, but, you know, it'll clearly be something during the public hearing. It'll come out and,
I'd say thing too is, you know, people think, you know, you're putting in 45 plus units in there. From a traffic standpoint, it's relatively little amount of traffic compared to a commercial use. You know, if we were gonna put a restaurant out there, restaurant would generate way more traffic than this project.
Understand, but to Scott's point, that came up when the original subdivision came
Yep.
through. So.
Yeah.
You can expect that we will hear that and
Yeah, understood.
we just need to be prepared.
Yep.
Right, so. I guess not to, okay.
And I'm putting another feed point on the 196.
Yeah.
So we got
There,
another row.
I won't repeat because as Scott said, we have a little over 2 pages of staff comments. But I guess I would just ask, can you at least talk a little bit about the fire chief and he questioned would it support the number of units and so forth, because we're going from the 10 units to another,
His major concern was about fire protection.
Right,
And about
so-
cistern.
do we have, do you think you've got that resolved? with the-
I don't have resolved yet. I gotta work with the fire department to cite, he was trying to determine how many feet he's comfortable extending lines from a cistern. And that will kind of depend on how many cisterns we need. Because if he's willing to extend 2,000 feet off a cistern to run, you know, lines, then that's gonna change, right? If he's only willing to extend 1,000 feet. So I've got to work with him a little bit to see what their requirements are, and then that will determine how many cisterns and what will be decided.
And there was just a lot of other types of comments, and the director of public works talking something about a sidewalk and so forth, so.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to go into all those details, but you guys,
No, I think, comments on the staff covered it pretty well, as well as what you.
I'm assuming that that entrance is gonna be right across the street from Bryan Street, where it goes in.
I think it does line up with one of those,
I think it's Bryan.
I think you probably like that.
it's Gagney concrete.
Also, when you get done, I like to have the big set of plans.
Sure, you can take mine.
You know, it's all revised.
Oh, when it's all revised, you're saying? Okay, yeah.
When you're done before you come back.
Yeah.
okay. All right. Other questions, comments, Joey, do you have anything?
I guess from my perspective for guidance, one of the big issues, I think, was open space. And just get some feedback from the board if in lieu fee, you think is acceptable with a possible trail connection. If we're going to be providing some actual open space dedicated out there. I know we had talked about at the staff review meeting about doing potentially some wetland areas, maybe some stream corridors, and just what the town would be looking for.
So where on the plan is the CMP corridor?
On, you can kind of see it off on the right-hand side if you're looking
Is that it?
at this one.
Yes.
So you can kind of see a gravel trail going through, and actually in some areas it kind of weaves onto the applicant's property, which isn't a big deal, but.
Is that the same CMP corridor that actually crosses over 196? And we're talking about that type of trail system?
I don't think it crosses, well, at least not in this area.
Well, there is a CMP corridor that goes across 196.
Further down, you know.
It's almost down to White House Crossing.
Yeah.
In that area. And I think that trail system is basically all, like ATVs. As opposed to pedestrian. I don't know about that one.
Okay.
But-
Yeah, and I was gonna check with CMP to see, you know, if they allow, connections to that. You know, it's somewhat, I think, of an informal,
You're planning on this in about 10 years?
what's that? Oh, yeah,
Trying to get something from CMP?
yeah. Usually the local guys are pretty good.
That's true.
Yeah.
We're not here to ban Austin.
No, it's just we've had other proposals that they had tried to deal with CMP for things.
They do have a trail riders group that maintains a lot of the trails around that area.
Right,
Because-
and those were all ATVs.
Because on some days, when it gets muddy and stuff, they'll close the trails and stuff like that, so.
So back, I think to your question, I had remembered reading this, but the town planner questioned the lack of dedicated open space on the plan, noting the conservation commission and so forth. I won't reread that whole thing. But I guess what I would kind of like to see with me, again, we'll see what the other board members, but maybe at least review that and see what in fact might work as far as open space. And maybe it's a hybrid between, you know, B and blue and open space or something like that, but
Yeah.
rather than saying absolutely all one or the other, what are the options and what can be done?
And I
So,
think,
can I say something?
Sure.
The Conservation Commission and the Recreation Director have both taken a look at the plan. And they both feel like some pedestrian improvements should be made within the subdivision, which you've already kind of touched on a little bit. But I think they both recommend that there be an in-lieu fee. In addition to that. So whether or not, you know, there's some kind of discounted in lieu fee, that remains to be seen, but they recommend pedestrian improvements, mainly.
For the, in the large stream area, I mean, the contours look pretty steep on the map.
Yeah.
Your plots, but are there areas, would there be an availability there to potentially do some trails? I mean, it really does kind of connect, since you're on both sides of the stream. And Ivanhoe's right there. Seems like if there's a way to do it, there could be kind of like some neighborhood connection streams in that area, trails in that area. You know, there would, it wouldn't be just throwing a trail down, because it would have to be, reinforced and whatnot to make sure you're not degrading the shore zone. You'd have to put in some bridges, but
Yeah, nice start.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it might be something to talk to the Conservation Commission about.
I just want to add that I do apologize for the way the staff comments are written out. The open space fee discussion was a little bit of a journey along it. So I think that what came out of it, just to distill it, was the desire, and we've seen this desire in other written comments, for more robust pedestrian connection than there already is, and more robust pedestrian connection than there was discussed in this presentation, because I believe all that was discussed was potential connections to CMP and gravel shoulders. I think my understanding of comments that we're getting are suggesting that more is desired than that. I think that the board would be good if you weigh in on that. And then additionally, so both Conservation Commission and Rec have said that they don't think that there's a good potential for open space to meet all of it. Potentially there could be a reduction, but at this point, it's pedestrian access to the neighborhoods nearby is the most focus, but the land probably isn't suitable for, you know, a lot of trails to fully meet that requirement. That's where we've gone, and I apologize if that wasn't clear.
No, that's fine, and that's kind of what I was calling a hybrid.
Yeah.
right? So,
I know
other,
what she said.
yeah, that's what she said.
I guess for direction, when you're talking about pedestrian access improvements, I mean, are we talking about sidewalks all throughout? You know, because that drastically changes the project and the scope of the project. In terms of the cost of curbs, storm drainage, you know, all that, or are you talking about just pedestrian improvements to, you know, thinking there's that 50-foot, I'll call it easement, those 50-foot gap that leads up to Blueberry. There'd be an opportunity to bring some sort of trail down there to allow for residents to kind of connect in that portion. In terms of what the town's looking for. Because the ordinance doesn't require sidewalks, except for that, the last portion that leads out to Lewiston Road. Per definition, the planning board can require sidewalks on that. We didn't propose it because it'd be kind of a sidewalk to nowhere.
Right.
Because there's not one on.
We're not suggesting that, and frankly, I don't think you're looking for us to design that right now.
No.
But, I guess what I would do, based on at least what I've heard, is sit down with conservation, we would talk to the public works and say, you know, when you say more robust pedestrian, what are you looking for, and what are you looking at? And see how that could or couldn't work with what you're trying to do, and maybe work through something that makes sense to all parties. Certainly it has to be something you can do, and something that's not gonna be overly costly, but the bottom line is there a solution there that satisfies a number of needs, and still is workable for all parties? Did I say that right or not?
Yeah, I was thinking, that just my vision right now, you know, let's say the Ivanhoe area, that, in like Coville Road is just paved, and then there's grass beyond any type of pavement. So it's happening, I saw two people who were walking along there, and they're actually kind of like in the, where one might think a car might be, if the pedestrians walk there.
Yeah.
So if you're not having, you know, the open space or something else, then maybe a little more friendly with regard to pedestrians walking on the road, because you're gonna have a fair number of people living here, there's a fair number of units, and people like to walk for their exercise.
Yep.
So something, that's kind of where I was, you know, thinking in terms of trying to not have to worry about the open space, and something for the pedestrians. Which was along the comprehensive plan.
Now you're referring to the comprehensive plan, okay,
I do it suits me.
there you go. All right. Any other comments and if we're not answering your question, tell us, right?
No, I think that answers my question. I'll reach out to Sky to try to set up a meeting with the conservation.
I have one more question now that we're, you know, talking about that, the major, you know, the end of the road heading towards Lewiston Road. On the other end of Raspberry Lane, where it goes to the CMP corridor, are there plans potentially for a subsequent development on it? I mean, it looks like, I know you're getting to a couple more lots, but it also looks like it could go across.
I mean,
there's a large lot on the other side of that.
There is developable land on the other side, but you'd have to get crossing approval from CMP. So there's more hurdles to
do that.
to be able to do that, but there's potential, you know, that's why we extended that right away, right to the CMP border. So if somebody in the future wanted to extend that, as long as they got approval from CMP, they could extend that onto it. That property.
The main reason to say it is that if that were to get extended, if that were in some plans that, you know, maybe that whole road needs to be up to major. Because
Yeah.
it would have to be.
Yes, whoever did that next one may have to approve to major, depending on the trips.
Is that lot on the other side common ownership with this?
It is owned by the same owner, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's not, they're two separate parcels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would be.
There's also a railroad bed out there too.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions for us? Okay, anything else? All right, good, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, John.
So,
Move to adjourn.
yes, please. Second?
Yep.
All in favor? All right, again, not contrary.